An 89-year-old nun collapses on a courthouse floor. Hours earlier, she begged a global pop star on camera to stop. I'm not saying the lawsuit killed her. I'm just saying that's what her best friend believes. And her best friend was standing right next to her when it happened. This is the story of a mansion nobody was supposed to be able to buy. A convent with a fish-shaped pool. A pop star who once joked about selling her soul to the devil right before she tried to buy a house full of actual nuns. 5 old women, 1 church worth billions, and a fight over 30,000 square feet that would end in a death nobody can fully explain. Stick around, because this one gets ugly fast. Before we get into it, where are you watching this from? Drop your city below. I want to see how far this one travels. And hey, while you're down there, tell me what time it is where you are. I'm always curious how many of you are watching this at 2 a.m. instead of sleeping. No judgment. I do it too. Alright, let's get into it. If you're new here, this channel breaks down real cases every single week, the ones with just enough missing pieces to keep you up at night. Hit subscribe now because you don't want to miss what's coming in the back half of this one. Let's talk about the house first, because the house is the whole reason any of this happened. Picture 30,000 square feet sitting in the hills above Los Angeles. A dozen bedrooms, a chapel, gardens that take a golf cart to cross, and because apparently regular pools are for regular people, a swimming pool shaped like a fish. Here's the twist. This wasn't built as a mansion, it was a convent. For decades, it was home to a small order of nuns. Not 500, not 50, 5. 5 elderly women who had lived there since the early 1970s, back when they pulled every dollar they'd ever saved, and bought the property outright, together as a community. That's important. Remember that part. Now fast forward a few decades. The Catholic diocese that technically held ties to the property gets hit with a wave of lawsuits, historic abuse allegations going back years, the kind of scandal that rocked churches across the country in the early 2000s. The diocese settles, and when you settle a case that size, you need money. A lot of it. So the diocese starts looking at its real estate, and their eyes land on the convent. There's just one problem. The nuns who live there believe, understandably, that the property is theirs. They bought it, they paid for it, they've lived in it for over 40 years. The diocese disagrees. In their view, they hold the deed, and the deed says what it says. In 2011, the diocese moves to push the sisters out. The nuns are furious. But on paper, in a courtroom, we've lived here for 40 years, and we love it. Doesn't beat. We hold the legal title. So the property goes up for sale, whether the sisters like it or not. Before we get to the part where a pop star shows up uninvited, if you're enjoying the breakdown so far, drop a like. It genuinely helps this video reach more people, and honestly, it costs you nothing. Enter our second character, a wildly famous pop star. We'll call her Kayla Vance. Think platinum records, sold-out stadiums, a public persona built on being a little provocative, a little controversial, always in the headlines. In 2014, Kayla decides she wants a house that matches her level of fame. She wants something enormous, something with a story. She finds the convent listing, and she falls in love with it immediately. She offers the diocese $14.5 million. The diocese says yes almost instantly. They don't ask the nuns. They don't loop them in. They just accept the offer and start moving toward closing the deal. And that's when the sisters find out the woman buying their home is not exactly convent material. The nuns look into Kayla Vance, and what they find does not sit well with 5 devout, elderly Catholic women. Provocative lyrics, headline-grabbing stunts, and the detail that really sticks with them, an old interview where Kayla joked, half laughing, about having sold her soul to the devil for fame. To the sisters, this isn't a punchline. This is a woman who is either mocking their faith, or worse, telling the truth. Either way, they are not about to hand their home over to her without a fight. The diocese, wanting this to go smoothly, arranges a face-to-face meeting at the property. Kayla shows up in person to try to win the sisters over, and it is, by every account, one of the most awkward meetings you will ever hear about. She insists the "sold my soul" comment was a joke. She tells them she actually grew up deeply religious, and this part is true. Her parents were pastors. Her childhood home was so strict that she wasn't even allowed to say the word deviled in deviled eggs. They were angel eggs in her house. She shows the sisters a small religious tattoo on her wrist as proof of her faith. Then, in a final move to win them over, she offers to sing a hymn for them, a cappella. She has to pull out her phone to look up the lyrics. The nuns are unmoved. If anything, having to Google the words to a hymn while trying to convince a group of nuns you're devout does not land the way she'd hoped. The meeting ends, nothing is resolved, and the sale keeps moving forward anyway, because ultimately, it's not the nuns' decision to make. It's the diocese's. Except the sisters aren't done. If the church is willing to sell their home out from under them, they decide two can play that game. Quick pause if you want to see how 5 elderly nuns managed to outmaneuver a fortune-level legal team, even for a little while. Comment Team Nuns below. I read every single one, and I want to know whose side you're on before this thing goes to court. The sisters find their own buyer. A wealthy restaurateur, we'll call her Marlene Kessler, 54 years old, owner of a small empire of upscale restaurants across Southern California. Marlene offers to buy the convent directly from the nuns and promises to preserve it, turning it into a boutique hotel rather than tearing out its history. The nuns agree. They sign the deed over to Marlene. She moves in almost immediately, which means as of that moment, there are now 2 separate competing sales of the exact same 30,000 square foot property happening at the exact same time, and Kayla Vance is not about to let that slide. Kayla doesn't sue the nuns. That would be a public relations disaster, and even her team knows it. Instead, she sues Marlene, arguing that the sisters never had the legal authority to sell the property out from under a deal that was already in motion. What follows is years, actual years of litigation, depositions, motions, appeals. 2 wealthy, powerful women locked in a legal war over a former convent, while the 5 elderly nuns who started all of it watch from the sidelines, dragged deeper into a fight they never wanted. Let that sink in for a second. Women in their 80s, spending what should be some of their most peaceful years, sitting through years of court dates over a house they thought they already owned. In 2017, the case finally goes to trial, and the ruling stuns everyone. A judge determines that under church law, the sisters actually needed formal approval from a higher religious authority to sell the property at all, approval they never obtained, which means Marlene's purchase, the one the nuns handed over in good faith, is invalid from the start, which means the original deal, the diocese's sale to Kayla Vance, can move forward. Kayla wins, but it gets worse for Marlene. A jury doesn't just rule that her purchase was invalid, they find she acted with malice and fraud in her attempt to interfere with the original sale. She's ordered to pay Kayla and the diocese a combined $10 million in damages. $10 million is the kind of number that ends businesses, and it ends Marlene's. She's forced into bankruptcy. If you're still watching at this point, I need you to know this is where it gets heavier. So before we go there, hit subscribe if you haven't, because next week's case might be the most disturbing one I've covered yet. Okay, let's finish this. In 2018, Marlene has to appear in bankruptcy court to formally account for her losses. And by this point, something unexpected has happened. Over the course of this years-long legal war, the nuns and Marlene have become genuinely close, real friends, forged in the middle of a fight none of them chose. 2 of the sisters show up at the courthouse that day just to support. Outside, before they go in, one of the nuns speaks briefly to reporters gathered on the steps. She's frail, she's exhausted, and she pleads directly, publicly, for Kayla Vance to stop, to let this go, to stop pursuing further legal action against her friend, because in her words, it wasn't helping anyone. It was only hurting people. Those would be the last public words that nun ever spoke. Hours later, inside the courtroom, she collapses. A heart attack. She's 89 years old. She doesn't survive it. One of the other sisters would later say publicly that she believed the stress of the lawsuit, years of it at her age, is what killed her friend. I'm not saying it isn't. I'm telling you what someone who was standing right next to her believes happened. And here's the part that makes the whole story even stranger. After all of it, the lawsuit, the $10 million, the bankruptcy, the death, Kayla Vance still needed one final approval to actually buy the property, a formal sign-off she was never able to secure. Her option to purchase the house quietly expired. She never moved in. Marlene lost everything. The nuns lost their home years earlier. One of them lost her life. And in the end, after everything, the house went to absolutely nobody. It just sits there, empty. 30,000 square feet and a fish-shaped pool, and not a single person who fought for it ever got to call it home. So what do you think really happened in that courtroom? Was it just a tragic, unrelated medical event? An 89-year-old's heart giving out under ordinary circumstances? Or was it something a years-long legal war pushed her toward? Let me know in the comments. And hey, one more thing before you go. What's the weather like where you're watching from right now? I like picturing where all of you are when you watch these. If this case pulled you in, there's another one waiting for you right now. And trust me, it's darker than this. Please subscribe, hit the bell, and I'll see you in the next one.